Do you think that in the awakening as it happens in Zen, and are you noticing in your students that there often is an energetic response or a Kundalini, what might be labeled a Kundalini reaction following an awakening?
Yeah, it often some sort of energetic sort of download is often a part of the awakening process. So we see that a lot. And when I was training in Zen, it just wasn't talked about much. Mm-hmm. So the way that I teach isn't necessarily sort of the traditional way of Zen. It's just more the way that I teach. And I don't really try to stay within the confines of the tradition of Zen or the methods of Zen or anything like that. But certainly I think that very often a part of one's awakening, I kind of call it one of the byproducts of awakening, can be a whole lot of energetic shifts. There can be a whole lot, there can almost be none. Mm-hmm. But it's one thing that can be a byproduct.
What's your perspective of that, of what it's about?
I think that the different aspects of Kundalini and opening of the various centers of the subtle body and the gross physical body are ways that as form, even though if it's subtle body, to me it's still form, that they awaken to their highest potential. It's almost like the awakening of the body, the awakening of the subtle body, the awakening of the gross physical body. So in that sense, those various centers awaken or open, and we're functioning as a body at a very high level of our capacity as a body. And I think that that's really what a lot of the whole process of energetic change, of Kundalini process, is really about. And that can be a byproduct of awakening. It may not be a byproduct of awakening. And just in the same way that Kundalini opening and on various levels of being and functioning from a higher level physically, energetically, because those various centers have woken up, that can happen, and one can be very open on those levels, and that doesn't necessarily mean that one has had a spiritual awakening.
So you're saying that a Kundalini awakening often happens, and this has been my observation too, without a corresponding self-realization.
Right.
And self-realization can happen without an obvious correspondence of Kundalini.
Right. Kundalini awakening can also have the correspondence to actual awakening. There isn't a strict correspondence. One can have a true and authentic realization of the ultimate nature of reality during or after a Kundalini experience. One doesn't equal the other, but it's possible. Just like one can have an awakening to the ultimate nature of reality, and one may or may not have the fallout of an energetic, or what might be called a sort of a Kundalini process, happen as a result, or as an effect, you might say.
In the Kundalini science, there's a lot of reference to partial awakenings and awakenings to certain levels, and
right.
and a conclusion that an awakening to a particular point in the head, called Makara point, that correlates with the realization of self. So there's a lot of framework for talking about being
right.
part of the way through this process, but not
right.
fully arrived.
Fully arrived, yeah. Well, I think that's the part where when I look at it, I would say that I just don't see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is the physical body or the energetic body becoming more awake and more awake and more awake and more awake. But that does not correspond to one becoming more spiritually awake or more spiritually self-realized. They're two totally and absolutely different things. What it basically means is my dream character is becoming more and more and more awake, and it's becoming capable of all these sorts of experiences and these ability to perceive very subtle things, and on it goes, and the heart opening and I don't know, whatever it is, the third eye opens and all of that stuff. And that basically has to do with me as what I call my dream character. It has to do with me. I'm opening. Where to me, enlightenment isn't about that. Enlightenment is when consciousness suddenly lets go of being lost in its dream character, and it becomes the lucidness of the dream itself. That I am not just the character, I am the lucidness of this dream. And in that sense, from that standpoint, you can look back at your dream character, as it were, and you realize it doesn't really much matter whether the Kundalini has awoken in that dream character or not. And no wonder awakening the Kundalini then you can see it doesn't really have any direct correspondence to becoming totally lucid within the dream. It just makes the dream character awaken to higher and higher capacities that it has. But the awakening is the awakening out of the dream character of a totally different paradigm shift. And the two are very often, in fact, I would say almost always, are confused. People link together mystical experience and enlightenment, and mystical experience is mystical experience, and enlightenment is enlightenment, and the two are not the same. One might lead to the other. Mystical experiences might eventually open up into true enlightenment, and true enlightenment might make one more open to mystical experiences, but they're not the same thing that they're often thought to be.
Do you think there is some kind of a process that goes on in enlightenment, aside from Kundalini, that there would be a predictable process of awakening and then something that would occur beyond the initial awakening?
Well, it depends which way you want to approach it. In a strict sense, enlightenment is the end of all processes. It's awakening out of process. Because all processes have to do with me as an individual somebody. There's no such thing as a process that doesn't have to do with me. And since awakening is truly awakening out of the me to whom the processes occur, strictly speaking, there isn't a process that leads to enlightenment or leads to more enlightenment. Enlightenment is more defined by the total cessation of the process, of waking up out of the context and paradigm of processes. And having said that, since everything is one, and everything is one continuum, and everything is one whole, including one's own dreamed character, me, personal sense of self, since it is all ultimately one, and it's just a continuum from absolute nothingness to something, or someone, that from that point of view, when we realize the absolute and radiant nothingness of our own being pure awakeness itself, then there can be a process through which the humanity, the body and mind that's still walking around, it's almost like I have to leave that suit called my body and mind to realize that I'm always beyond body and mind. But then I still got this human life going on, so it's almost like, okay, now I'm going to slip back into my suit because it's the only way to get around here on this, earth thing. And now my suit, my body and mind, can have a either more or less direct correspondence to what I have now realized to be true. And so by correspondence, the body and mind will either be a clear or distorted expression of what I know to be true now. And so in that sense, the body and mind and energetic body can undergo a process of expressing that deep and transcendent truth.